Greetings, everyone. My name is Caleb Gilbert, and I'm a member of the ASIS Executive Protection Community. The community was created to reach out to people all over the world who are interested, working, or pursuing a career in executive protection. We have the Online Connects page through the ASIS website, and I'd encourage each and every one of you to go on there and participate in the conversation and move your career forward, your interest forward, whatever it might be. We have a global community of professionals that are working together to try to make the executive protection industry better. Today, I have the pleasure of bringing you a podcast with some industry leaders. We've chosen this segment to be focused on the private family or home offices of ultra high net worth individuals. And today's panelists are two individuals that I've known for a long time, who I know have delivered programs, repeatedly successful, high caliber programs with solutions that I think that anyone can glean insight from and really take their knowledge, take their professional experience and learn, grow, and develop as a professional. With that, let's go ahead and get started and introduce yourselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Guy. I'm a director of security for a private family office. Prior to that, I was the head of protective services for Facebook for about 8 years.
And I am Marty Lev. I am currently with a capital venture fund and private family office. And prior to that, I was with Google, Snap, and Amazon Web Services.
Great. Thank you so much for volunteering your time today to share with the industry. One of the reasons why I wanted to focus on this specific sector of the executive protection industry is because it's very unique. You know, the challenges faced by private family offices aren't necessarily, the same challenges as corporate and celebrity and, religious figures, government, things like that. How would you say, with a fast pace of change in the private family office, how do you stay current with best practices and emerging changes?
Well, definitely agree with you that it is very different than the corporate side. Even when a corporate side might be protecting a family, such as, let's say, the CEO or CFO's family, the resources, the structure, the communications is very different. And on the family office side, I think it becomes even more important that we have our own intelligence gathering that focuses on the family members. Things like monitoring the media, networking, sticking close to professional groups such as ASIS becomes really important to know what others are experiencing, both on the family side and as you go downward from your protectee to spouses, children, even household staff. Right? There's a different mix that we don't often see janitorial staff at a large Fortune 500 company being harassed because of political positions that the company has taken. But yet you do see that in a family office environment. So monitoring that media connection, staying close to others becomes really important.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I want to add is I think it's really important, especially family offices, to benchmark a lot. Usually when I get tasked with a new asset to protect or develop a new program that I haven't done in the past, what's unique in family offices is that most of our principals share the same lifestyle usually. So it's kind of easy to find a different team that have already done that in the past and see what's worked for them or what didn't work for them. I think a good example is when COVID hit, a lot of the teams, especially in family offices, tried to figure out what's the good practices on testing, access control, and travel. I think we all have to deal with the same problem. But it's also good to venture outside of the family office world and benchmark with different teams, for example, in the tech industry, just to see what technology they're using that works for or can work for us as well, and what's their best practices once in a while.
That's great. What would you describe as the most significant challenge that you face in your role? Managing a global team, large teams, lots of moving parts. What do you think is the biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge is actually be connected to what's happening with the agents on the ground, like managing up and managing down as well. Obviously, what principals see the most is our agent on the ground. They provide the service, they show the quality of the product. As we all know in the industry, it doesn't matter how many wins you get, it's the one small mistake that makes them all forget and take us back. So the biggest challenge is actually stay connected to the team. And what I usually do is a lot of skip-up meetings. So I try to meet up with the agents sometimes just to see how they're doing things. And training, that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, just to quality control. Yeah.
I'll pick up on that and say career development, I think, is the toughest challenge, because many of our teams, especially the in-house teams, not the contractor teams, are somewhat smaller. There isn't as much mobility within the ranks. And so people are looking for that career development. And we don't necessarily have the promotion opportunities that you would have in a corporate setting, where people can move laterally to take on a different assignment, or upward to take on either a technical role or a managerial role. And Guy's team, for example, is larger than my team. So there may be some more opportunities with team leads and other specialties, but yet career development continues to be one of the greatest challenges when you're working in a private family environment. And the way we've tried to overcome that is with unique assignments, something that's more challenging, a little bit outside the normal realm of an EP agent, or special projects, whether that's a threat assessment or working a detail that normally wouldn't have an EP agent assigned, but we do it to help that person grow in scale and scope.
That's great. You mentioned, a lot of the changes that came after COVID and, transitions in the industry, and, we see the different seasons, but what are some of the changes in the industry, the executive protection industry, specifically as they relate to family offices, that you've seen in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I can speak about my team specifically. What we've seen since COVID hit, remote living. Before COVID hit in general, most of my team was local. As we know, a lot of people left California during COVID. Recruiting became an issue, and we had to become a lot more flexible. And now most of our team actually does not live in California. So I think in the industry in general, people are a lot more flexible now for remote living and allowing it for different teams. I'm not sure how it's in your team, Marty.
We've had that request a bit more for people to live remote. And as California has become very expensive, that's a big driver as well. So COVID, the economic impacts that we're facing the last couple of years as a result of COVID and other factors has driven people out of California, and it makes it tougher to recruit. And then when you do find people, they're less inclined to live locally, which really impacts your flexibility. Our principals, both Guy's and mine, have very flexible lifestyles. They have resources to quickly change their plans and go on a trip or change a trip. And when you don't have agents living local, that's just one more logistics factor that becomes part of the equation that you have to plan for and impacts your service delivery. The other thing that I think I've seen really that has impacted us in the last couple of years is the consolidation of vendors. We all go through the cycles with our vendors. We love vendor A for a while, then vendor A gets a little too comfortable. They have change of staff. The service delivery isn't the same, so we move to vendor B. And we go through that cycle with vendor B, and we move to vendor C, and then we go back to A because things have changed again. Now, vendor A and B are the same company.
Right.
And the reasons we left A may still be there. And so this creates a really difficult situation and a bit confusing for the agents too, right? Because now they're having different directions. The consolidation of vendors has probably been the biggest challenge in the last couple of years.
That's some great insights there. How have those two factors changed the way that you are planning? I know in the family office you don't plan for so long, but that long-term planning, that trajectory you're trying to go, how has that impacted that?
I wish I could say we had a long-term plan, but our principal is a travel warrior, and so our plans change rapidly. The vendors, for example, have been very cooperative with that, but it does put a strain on their resources and truly puts a strain on our internal team, right? If they thought they were going on an 11-day trip and now it's a 20-day trip, that's a bit disruptive. If they thought they were going to country A and B and they had done their prep and suddenly we introduced country C, that changes the dynamic quite a bit too. So those are still some of the challenges that we're trying to navigate through. We can ask, working with our executive assistants, working with other family members to try and get some insight on what the plan is. But I think even if you look at normal media reporting on other Fortune 500 executives, we see that suddenly the people from one of the automotive manufacturing plants is now testifying before Congress, and nobody knew that was going to happen until a couple days before. And so the dynamic of travel is really changed.
Yeah, I think in general, to summarize what Marty said, it's like plan to be flexible. Like be able to respond to immediate changes for travel, like we said, or any problems arise from like personnel not available. In general, for when I tackle like a new program or something that I need to build or tackle, I'm looking at actually to the future, and not always the quick solution, because sometimes it's easier to throw bodies at it or throw money at something. But I'm looking to see if the end product, if we put some a little bit extra work, maybe in the short term, it won't be the best solution, but long term, we'll end up with a better product. And as you can see that, especially with technology in building teams.
Outstanding. That's great. Can you share the most impactful lesson that you've learned in your current role?
Slow down.
I like it.
It's easy to pick like the low-hanging fruits, just like quick solutions, like I said, but slow down, understand the environment that you're in, the history of why things are done, same way they are done, the different players in the teams in the office, and not always go for the quick solution. Yeah, like I said. Yeah.
Play the long ball.
Yes.
I think that's true, absolutely, and would come back to that later. The other thing is that I think now more businesses understand the role of private security and executive protection that maybe didn't 5 years ago or 10 years ago for sure. And so that makes it a little easier to work with hotels, restaurants, event venues, even other private businesses that you may be visiting. They have a greater understanding of our role and our needs. And unlike some of our friends at the government level, where they can flash a badge or everybody understands the role of the Secret Service or DS, or let's say even a military protective detail, years ago, they didn't understand that for the private sector.
Right.
And we were always trying to portray ourselves as assistants of some type. And now we're able to fully disclose we're security. We have a certain due diligence. We have certain things that we need from these hosts. And I think there's a greater acceptance of that did not exist previously.
$100 bills grease the world. So with the ASIS executive protection community, the goal is really to reach out to a broad array of community members globally. One thing that I found valuable for myself in career development is just trying to get insight from people such as yourself, little tidbits of knowledge, right? And so could you give the viewers one piece of advice just from your perspective to help them in their EP career, whatever their level is?
The one key tip I would give anybody in our profession, whether executive protection or security overall, is learn our protectees business. So if you're a security professional working for a private entity, even a government agency, you've got to understand the business that your host, your employer is in order to properly calibrate the risks. If you don't understand their business, it's all too theoretical. And you come across too idealistic, which means that our message isn't being received. So in the case of Guy's protectee or my protectee, we have to understand what their day-to-day business is in order to best assess the risk and know what security posture we should be taking. So really that would be the core tip I would give anybody in our profession today.
That's outstanding.
Just want to add something short. I think it's also important when you start in the industry, you want to learn more about a specific position. Important in general for every PhD to take or every professional is to find a mentor. Somebody who's been there, done that, or doing it in the moment and can help you, guide you in your career.
That has fundamentally transformed my career multiple times. You think of somebody's career in government or law enforcement, military, there's more of a structure. And as we, grow up in the industry and mature and move on to the different levels, unless you have a mentor that kind of gives you that kick to step it up when you move to the next level, or where to focus your attention, where to focus your training. That is incredibly hard to do without a mentor. So I would echo that 1,000 times over for sure. What do you think the most significant contribution industry partners or vendors can help deliver to improve the overall success of your program?
I think what key for me, and we touched it in the previous question, is recruiting and vet the agents. As we all know, in the AP industry, it's kind of hard when you do an interview to assess people's skills. It's not like you can ask them to program something or do a test for it. Usually, so it's very important that the vendors get the right references, really do a good background check, talk to people that work with that agent, because we all know how long it takes to train somebody in the detail, and then 3 months later, it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Usually what I say in the past is, do I want to spend 12 hours in the car with that guy? It doesn't mean he's a good agent, but that's what we see in the past, that it's important that they do a good process in recruiting good people. Yeah.
I think that's a really a great value add that the vendors can bring us, is helping in recruiting, and it helps them and us, right? Because now they have a friendly partner in our organization. And if it's somebody who's been trained by them, then we already have similarities in how we approach the role. I would also add, though, that vendors have broad threat information. They work with a broader set of clients than even our own networking can be, right? And so they get to see threats that maybe we're not thinking about. And maybe it's tied to geography, maybe it's tied to business, maybe it's tied to geopolitical. But the more they can share that broad threat spectrum and let us decide whether it applies to our protectee, that's really helpful. And I know some of them sell it as a business, and I understand the business model. And some of them have gotten really good about weekly newsletters or news snippets, and that is so beneficial. One, it helps somebody like Guy or I look knowledgeable to our protectee, which is always helpful.
Right.
And equally, it allows us to adjust, because we never know who our principal is meeting with. So if we're suddenly meeting with somebody that is in one of those business sectors that we weren't thinking about, now we have some threat intel to work from. And so that collateral risk issue becomes really valuable.
That's great. How have you seen, like the quality control on the backgrounds and, integration of intel with most of the boutique companies expanding or, consolidating, I guess, into the larger companies? Like, how have you seen that change? Has it improved? Is it about the same, or?
I don't know that I can say I've noticed a significant change either way through the consolidation. I think that we're seeing a little more uniformity in training as there's been consolidation. So all the acquired companies, their agents are now going through the same training as the buyer. But other than that, I haven't noticed any significant change in either the caliber of the recruits, where they get them from, or in the background checks. I would say the training area has been the one, and that's to their benefit as well, right? We have a base standard of performance, but it's also to their benefit because everybody's doing business the way they want it done.
Makes sense. So we spoke a little bit earlier on career progression, right? And how there's a lot of flat orgs in the family office world. But how would you say, or what piece of advice would you give to EP agents, EP managers, EP directors who at some point would like to work their way into a role such as yours? Is there anything they can do to prepare as they rise through the ranks to be able to be successful once they actually get into that seat?
Yeah, I think it's important from an educational perspective. It's also to take classes outside of the security world in general, which is accounting, business management. At the end of the day, when you get that position as ours, you're running a business at the end of the day. It's a small company. So you're dealing with multi-million-dollar budgets, a lot of people and personnel under you, HR problems. So you need to expand your skills outside just the security world and explore other venues. Yeah.
Absolutely agree. And I think that is one of the key differences between doing our role for a private family office versus a corporation where, again, you have that infrastructure, right? We talked about that in your first question, that when you're working for a corporation, you have an HR department, you have a legal department, you have all these massive resources that you can tap. We may still have a lawyer on the family office side, but that person is a generalist or is really focused on the business operations, not necessarily on HR legal or security legal issues. And so we have to broaden our horizon. The other thing I would add is we need to learn to be realistic. So much of what people experience in security is idealistic. It's the theoretical side. We have to protect against all losses. And there's a certain inconvenience that comes with that. And when you're working with a private family office, at least, these are individuals. And the ultimate protectee is the ultimate director of security. And he or she gets to make those decisions. So while there may be times to be idealistic and to focus on the theory, we also have to be realistic and understand their risk tolerance and what they're willing to do. I remember one CEO I worked for, this was a few years ago, there were some pie incidents targeting CEOs, and our CEO's comment at the time was, if I get hit with a pie, that's not the worst thing in the world. And so it gave us a sense of what should we be focusing on. And so it calibrated the risk tolerance for us.
Risk acceptance, big part. Well, both of you have had, long careers, worked in a lot of different, areas, zones, a lot of potential for learning. What's one piece or one lesson that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first started out in this industry?
I'll go back to Guy's answer on the first one about slowing down. It's okay to observe and collect information before acting. It's okay for us to not have to make an impact in that first 30 days or 60 days. There's usually a reason why things are being done the way they are. And even if we disagree, it may not be the fight to pick early on. And it may not really impact the risk to the protectee or benefit your agents who are delivering the service. So I do think slowing down and gathering the right information, making a good assessment on the operation, and then picking and choosing where you want to make some adjustments is really key.
I think what's really important that I think we're all guilty of, especially when we're field agents, is work-lifestyle balance. Work-life balance. You really see it often that people get burned out because everybody wants to travel and work as much as they can, but this is the long game. If you're doing it for like 15 years, you're going to burn out. So you need to really take care of yourself, take care of your body, stay in shape, especially if your principal is active. Take care of your family because you're going to do it for a long time, and you don't want to get burned out. And I think most of us are guilty in that and did not do it at one point of our career.
That's great to hear. With the geopolitical implications affecting, global travel, the different hot zones around the world and everything, just the changing dynamic that we're seeing on the global scale, where do you see the industry going in the next 18 months to 2 years?
Wow, that's a tough one. I mean, we've had a lot of discussions, and especially with ASIS, about the integration of cyber and physical. And I think that continues to be a hot topic, and finding the right balance is going to be really key on that one. I think the other thing is, going back to one of our previous answers, is staying close to the media, watching what's going on and being able to make our own assessments. Unfortunately, business is moving into countries where there is less independent media. So if you think about some countries in the Middle East, some countries in Africa, especially some of the larger Asian countries, the media is not independent like we're used to in the US or Canada, UK, or even in parts of Europe. So often what we read in the media may not actually be what's happening locally. And being able to make good assessments on that is going to be really important as we model our security programs as business and our principals travel there.
Very true.
I don't have anything to add to that.
All right. Sounds good. Well, Thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate taking time out of your busy schedules to hop online and share this. We'll wrap it up and get it pushed out to everybody so they can glean your knowledge.
Great.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Caleb.
All right.